I would just like to welcome everybody here to this masterclass. For those of you who don't know me, my name is David Munro-Jones. I'm the Operations Director of the IAPC&M. I'm also the person responsible for accreditation. Quite some while ago, I came across some of David's work. I was really interested in it, and over a period of what seems like an eternity, but over a period of months, we've now got to a point where I've managed to break into David's very tight schedule to talk to us. So let me briefly introduce David to you. Apologies if after read I've had cataract surgery, so I have to keep looking at sort of different angles when I'm reading. But David Drake, or Dr. David Drake, is the CEO of the Moments Institute, which is a global personal and professional development community. He's also head of, and forgive me if I don't pronounce this correctly, David, Ovidia Labs for Ovids, which is an AI startup supporting coaches. He's also the founder of Narrative Coaching and Integrative Development, a thought leader for the Institute of Coaching, 10 times WBEC Summit speaker, and an inaugural member of Coaches 50. He's written 75 publications, including as co-editor of Sage Handbook of Coaching, editor of The Philosophy and Practice of Coaching, and author of Narrative Coaching, which I do have on my bookshelf, I would just like to point out. The Definitive Guide to Bringing New Stories to Life, and The Five Maturities, a New Paradigm for Developing Coaches. The main reason we are here today. Something that you might not know about David, which I find really interesting, is that he once stood in Freud's living room in Vienna, where 100 years later you could still feel the energy of those who birthed the field of psychology, which I think is great. I can't think about Freud without the classic expression of tell me about your childhood. But
Yeah.
you've come to hear David rather than me. So David, thank you very much for being here. We appreciate your time, and the floor is yours.
No, you're welcome. So thank you, David. And I realize my name's still this. Let me see if I can fix my name. So we have this set up to share this link with a number of other people. So uh, there we go. Got my actual name. So we've got about an hour. So I just want to share some things about the work with the five maturities. So um, I developed narrative coaching about 20 some odd years ago, almost 25 years now, out of my PhD. And part of what I realized at the time was I was already drawn to coaching and had been in coaching for a few years, but I wasn't very attracted to more traditional ways of thinking about coaching because it didn't really match my lived experience about how people actually change and learn. So we built narrative coaching in a very unique way, and then I developed a whole bunch of other things after that, which has sort of culminated in a series of publications over the last 20 years, trying to imagine what coaching could become if we allowed ourselves to move beyond kind of more traditional goal-oriented agenda setting, kind of more linear processes. So um, I thought for me, it just starts with not only reconceptualizing coaching, but then also looking at how do we develop ourselves a bit differently. So I wanted to share a couple of things, and then we'll just get a chance for you to participate in some of that. And then I'll kind of talk a bit about the five maturities themselves. As we go, if there's anything you want to ask or share, just we're a small enough group online, you can just raise your hand, or if you're more of a typer, you can put that in the chat box. So um, yeah, so here's all the slides. We're not going to look at all of them. I'll send these to David when we're done, so you have copies for yourself. So I use this image a lot in our training programs and have for a long time, because I want to remind coaches that you don't need a rental truck to bring of what you know to your coaching session. And that most of what our clients appreciate most about us is the way that we are with them as another human being. And so I want to just really encourage us to think about traveling much lighter when we engage with clients. And I think the Five Maturities gives us a way to do that. What I observe a lot is fatigue in coaches who somehow have internalized this view that their life should look like this. And just cramming in more books and more trends and more fads and more shiny objects and more certificates and part of what connected David and I in the beginning was this idea of how do you accredit people in a way that's responsible for the profession, but also frees people to be their best selves. And so for me, it's not about the size of your backpack or the weight of the rock you can carry. It's much, much more like the young woman on the front cover. And so I paraphrase this really famous quote from Albert Schweitzer. And for me, it captures much more, the way I put it together, it captures much more of, I think, the way forward for coaching. So part of where this came from was when I was doing, I just finished the manuscript for the book on Sunday for the, is that historically, oftentimes if you were to go sit in on a coaching conference, most of the content's about coaching methods and coaching tools and coaching theories. But then if you look at the evidence, those have very little correlation to outcomes for clients. And that historically, for both in psychotherapy and in coaching, most of the research it would suggest that factors related to the client um, have the most significant impact on outcomes. And second after that is the nature of their relationship with you. And so part of what I'm going to suggest to you in our brief time together might seem a bit outlandish in some ways because it's so contrary to tradition, but it actually is much more supported by research than most of how much of coaching is taught. And I want to give you an example, then I'll give you a little setup for you to do some of this yourself. It goes with this picture here. And so I'm going to tell you the story because it says a lot about how I think coaching should feel if we're doing this in a masterful way. So years ago, when I was doing my PhD, I had gone to a retreat with other PhD participants and a couple of faculty and a large client of one of our faculty. And we were meeting in a very rural area of one of the eastern states in the US. And it was in the fall. It was quite hot during the day. So most of us had dressed in short sleeve shirts and, skirts or short pants and we spent all day together and we had dinner together, we had drinks together, we kept talking and talking and talking. We went into the late at night and it was time to go back to our cabins to go to sleep. So I went outside and it was a cloudy night with no ambient lighting anywhere and almost no moon. So in essence, and trees everywhere. So in essence, the half-mile trip back to my cabin was going to be quite difficult. So I thought, it's now very cold. I'm not dressed for the cold. I can walk and be safer, but it's going to be very uncomfortable. Or I can run and risk injury, but I'll be warmed by the run and will arrive more content that way. So I decided to run. And so as I'm running up this pitch dark road where literally you could not see more than a few feet in front of you, it's so dark because of the conditions. The bushes on both sides of the path started to light up, which I found quite shocking. We're like, what is this? And I looked behind me and it was dark again. And then I realized that in that part of the US, they had these insects called fireflies or lightning bugs, that the vibration of my feet were lighting up thousands of these bugs as I was running up the road. So in essence, I had my own private landing lights all the way back to my cabin. And I remember sitting on my porch just in awe of nature. And I probably even shed a few tears about how beautiful that was at the end of that day. But I've taken that memory, which I can feel even now as I share the story, as that's what I would like to feel when I'm coaching, as if the structure of what we're doing, the commitment of two individuals, the trust we put in each other to do this conversation, that we relax into this process that we're co-creating as if we've got lightning bugs all around us. And so for me, that just became a powerful metaphor. And I've now coupled that over these last recent years in particular with a deep dive into things like Taoism. So the next slide is sort of captures kind of the philosophy that we have now, which the Five Maturities gives us some resourcing to kind of bring to life. And then I'm going to ask you to do an exercise when we're done, but I wanted to share this with you. So this became the sort of mantra of much of the work that we do at the Moment Institute, which is both for practitioners, but also for clients. And when we can actually be attuned to what's actually happening in a coaching session, when we decenter ourself and our attachment to method, when we are free to notice quite deeply what's happening, we're aware in any moment in time, and we're inviting the clients to be aware in any moment in time of what is the curriculum, what are we being asked to pay attention to notice, to feel, to say, to be, to do. And that there's this idea we call structured emergence. So it's not just free floating, whatever we create, we notice a moment, we bracket a moment, and we say, what is happening here? And in whatever form is useful for the client. And so in that, we're trying to create a mini experience to ask ourselves the fundamental narrative coaching question, which is, what does this person need most right now? And if we're going to answer that question, we have to be in a very different state of mind as opposed to where are we on in my model? What should I be doing here? Here's 5 more really good questions I've got in the back of my mind. But instead, we're attending to the moment as it's emerging to us in this flow that we're involved in. So these are sort of some of the things then we then teach in our program is how to increase your consciousness so you can notice these moments. How do you help your clients become more aware, particularly around noticing what is, which is what is true, what is real, what is present. And so much of coaching otherwise sometimes gets into chasing things down the road. And we found more value in just helping our clients be attentive to what's actually happening for them right now in ways which are quite new for many of them. And then we can then step into what is emerging in any moment in time based on our sense of the curriculum that might invite the client to step into something new for themselves, to allow themselves to have an experience that they normally find uncomfortable, to experiment with new ways of talking or standing or narrating, to move into different roles besides a coach, because what that person needs right now is different than we might think of as coaching. And so you'll see this in a minute, but when we can allow ourselves to channel or deliver what's called for, my fundamental measuring stick is integrity. So my only commitment is, am I in integrity with myself? Am I doing what feels true to me and is grounded deeply in my own qualifications? Am I willing to stay within the boundaries of what's okay for me? Am I in integrity with my agreements for my client? Because they're the whole point of the conversation. Am I in integrity with what I've been asked to do here, perhaps on behalf of the client? And then what it does is allows me to free up the 69 years I've been alive with everything I've learned, everything I've become, everything I can offer. It's all available in the moment if it would serve the client, and this is what the client is asking for. And sometimes that looks like coaching, sometimes it looks like grief counseling, which is what I used to do. Sometimes it looks like somebody sorting out a problem. Might be And so the whole thing about the five maturities is to release any assumptions or any boxes we feel trapped in, to allow ourselves, what would enable me to be more alive in the moment with a client, to notice what curriculum is available to both them and us that might want some of our attention, and therefore, what do we feel called to do about that? So I'm going to ask you a question. Well, first, and then I'm going to see if you have any questions about what I've shared. You might, and then we're going to give you a chance just to have some quiet to answer this question for yourself. Um, there's only three of you on the call, so if you don't mind, we could stay here unless somebody has a great desire to be in a breakout room. But my question for you is, what curriculum is present in your life or your practice right now that might be an invitation for your own maturity? And so a curriculum could be something that's annoying you, or something that's puzzling you, or something that you're wishing for, but you're not quite sure how to do, or something that hasn't working out, or anything that's providing an opportunity for you to pay closer attention to this moment in time as you're thinking about it that might warrant some attention from you. Okay? So I'm going to stop there and just see what comes up for you, and either in general so far or in response to this question. And then we'll come back and we'll take a little excursion into the five maturities. I'm going to move you over here so I can see you better. There you are. So what emerges for you?
Hey, David, I guess I'll go ahead.
Okay, Austin, and then we'll come back to Jenny.
Thank you very much for sharing. I guess one thing that really emerges is I'm kind of new to coaching, started, earlier this year,
Okay.
but it seems, I mean, maybe I need to, put up a filter for and not just take on every single client that comes to me that wants to work with me. But it's beginning to seem like I want it more than they do. And then it makes me, double like question myself, like, am I really like a good coach? Like, am I doing a good job? Like, I'm learning every single day. Like, I'm getting better. Like, I'm always trying to improve, and I'm not seeing improvement in their lives. Like, so is that making me a bad coach? For one, and I want it more than them. That sounds crazy, but I mean, I asked ChatGPT, and he said, basically, I'm turning more into a parent than a coach.
Ah,
If I care more than they care. So, yeah, just some reflecting to do.
yeah. And so what shows up for you when you imagine that possibility what do you notice in yourself?
Um, I work on myself like a lot. Like I'm always asking, my coach, I'm always asking, different AI models, like how can I improve? What can I do? And then, they're basically saying you just need to choose like better clients or have like a maybe an interview. I mean, I offer like free consultations, but basically just kind of filter out the clients and only work with ones who maybe are more motivated or more relatable.
So can I offer you some reflections? So I really admire your zest for learning and growth, and I think that's a great asset to hold on to. I noticed when you were sharing that you used the word you a lot. And so one of the things for when you're new to coaching is that you really focus on trying to do a good job as a coach. And we all do to varying degrees. But um, one thing you might just pay attention to in that is pacing. And if indeed client factors are the most significant impacts on their outcomes, just ask yourself, what is this client ready for? It doesn't matter how good you are as a coach if you're doing things the client's not ready for. So maybe you can look at directing your attention more to the others and starting to notice more about them. And then to say, what does that invite in me? Because in some ways, maybe I already have enough in some ways. And yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Jenny?
Jenny, you were going to share something.
I just want to share how beautiful I found that imagery of the fireflies, and I'm going to really
Ah,
think about that. It's a very powerful example of what the coaching journey is and how we walk with people to light up their lives. So thank you for that.
no, you're welcome.
I think for me, so like it's the curriculum sort of swings between the work that I'm doing that I want to do for me and the work that I'm doing sort of within the IAPC&M. And I think the thing that I'm currently focused on, it's a part of the conversation that we've had, is how how to get to that point of helping sort of coaches and mentors just be open, very much like you've been talking about, to accept the fact that, look, the model and the methodology doesn't really matter. You know, if you've got the relationship, if you're the right person, just let things sort of naturally evolve and move away from this. I'm looking for a coach, I'm looking for a mentor, and all of the like numerous multitude
Yeah,
of words that can go in front of it, to just say, look, I've got an issue or a problem or or something I need help with. Are you the right person to to help me? And
yeah,
that's the I look at that within the IAPC&M, but also in my own work about
mm,
how do I phrase it in such a way that it's, look, I'm an open book. If you work with me, you get all of me and everything that comes
yeah.
with it.
And Austin, if we go back to what you're sharing with what David's saying, so I can imagine that when you have people that are newer to their own development journey, or people more with your energy level and age, that you would be a great coach for them because you can recognize that in yourself, right? Um, but I think to your point, David, it would be like going to your doctor and he's like, "Oh, I just got this great new gizmo in the mail today. I think I like to try it on you," right? But it may have nothing to do with why you're there at the doctor's office. So part of the maturation, which is really important to me in this whole equation, is learning to be more relaxed but confident and conscious about how we choose to use what we have and who we are.
Mm,
And one of the humbling things about coaching is that research would say over and over again that most people will forget most everything that you've talked about by the next day. What they won't forget is how it felt to be with you and the things that landed in them that you helped them land in them. And so again, there's a lot of humility that comes with coaching, recognizing that in the end, it's not about us at all.
mm,
And to your point, David, I think it's really interesting about how do we promote, depth of learning, authenticity of self, at the same time trying to have some kind of reasonable standards by which you can use the word coaching. And part of what I'm arguing in the book is a taxonomy that allows us to do that with more credibility, so we don't try to cram everybody under the same umbrella called coach.
mm.
Yeah.
Just before you, just digressing ever so briefly, just before you move, I have had that experience with a doctor. I went for an
Mm.
MRI scan many years ago on one of my eyes, and when they'd finished doing it, they came out and said, "Look, we're new to using this bit of kit. Do you mind staying in for another half an hour while we while we just play around with it?" And it was like, "Well, yeah, go on then." So
Yeah.
I've been through that.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, Wow. Yeah. Um, Amit, is there anything you'd like to share? Did I say your name correctly?
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, use the word Amit in between. I am from
Okay.
India, Mumbai, and that's a long name to pronounce.
Yeah.
I've been coaching for a while. I came into coaching from consulting. I still think that I don't trust the process as much. I've begun to
Okay.
trust my client, but whenever I'm into these sponsored coaching situations where the company is bringing me in, or there is a program manager, an expectation from a program, somebody else is paying for it. So I still think that there is this push for outcomes, with something in me is not able to resist completely. Either the businessman in me or the manager in me is not
Yeah.
able to say convincingly. That's what I'm grappling with.
Yeah, it's fair enough. It's very common. So I'll just share a couple of things. So I'm all about outcomes. That's the only point of coaching in some ways, is the growth of a human being who can then accomplish things that are important to them. Um, the reality is that most of the people that are pushing for goals and objectives and outcomes from coaching and organizations have no idea at all how people actually grow and learn. And they have this fantasy that you'll wave this magic wand, they'll take these steps, and then bam, they'll come out as if you're a machine, right? And so I'm very committed to helping my clients achieve what's important to them. I make no assumption that we have any idea how they're going to get there. And there are people in life who used to have these long-running debates with Tony Grant when he was alive. I said, I'm all for goal theory. When we're motivated, when we're focused, we tend to all do better. But I said, goals, most people don't live their life by goals. And for many people, goals are actually counterproductive. And so I tell my clients, I said, I will honor the outcomes you're hoping for. We'll hold them front and center. I can't promise that we'll deliver them because I have no control over this person's life. And they might, but I said, we will stay diligent about this. Um, but I can't promise you how we'll get there because I don't even know this person. I don't know what's in their way. I don't know what's keeping them from achieving these objectives. I don't know if the objectives make any sense. Um, there's a whole bunch of things we don't know. And so I try to take a more organic approach to how things grow in nature. Like plants don't set goals for themselves. You give plants the right conditions, they flourish. You don't, they die. So we have more control theoretically in coaching, but I just find that a helpful reminder. I don't have to go out to my garden and coach my plants to grow overnight. They just do that on their own. My job was to create good soil, good water, good sun, things in the right combination, and they do the rest from there. Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. And I just wanted to add one more thing that you said, and it happened to me recently. Uh, Clients don't really remember what you said. They carry a great impression of what happened between us, especially the things that they enjoy.
Yes.
In fact, I have somebody who I'm coaching, and he's been with me, a very senior executive, for the last 5 years. It's too long a time to have a program coaching, but he's been there and he's been benefiting. So he told me yesterday that whenever I am with you, the moments I seem to be always in the high. When we are away, the lows come in. So
Wow.
what you
And what,
said made a lot of sense to me.
yeah, yeah. And and then for me, if I were his coach, then I would ask, how can you create more of these on your own?
Yeah, that was a
And
great question. Yes, I agree.
yeah, okay. All right. So let me just share a bit about the five maturities, and then I'm going to say them again, just in our brief time, just kind of show you the brief model, and then I just kind of walk through what it might mean for coaching. Some of this I've always shared, but just to plant some seeds and some sort of talk through what this might mean for us. So um, I'm going to skip this part. Go here. Okay. So just to give us a bit of orientation. So one of the main points in the book, and I've been writing about for quite some time, is that competency models are great for beginners. So for someone like you, Austin, starting out in coaching, like competency models, basic frameworks, basic tools, that would be true of any craft or any trade or any profession you joined. You just have to learn basic things, right? The problem is that we keep using competency models, which then become weaker and weaker resources for just left on their own. And I know, David, you guys have worked on a lot of other things you do for people around accreditation. But unnamed bodies, unlike you, who rely so much on these, they're not very effective. And matter of fact, after a while, become counterproductive because then people are acting to conform to the model, not to the reality of what their client is actually facing. So I wanted to put competency in a place where it is one of the 5 masteries. But I also wanted to say it doesn't matter if you're just accruing knowledge and masteries if you're not a very evolved human being and you're immature. So a great example would be an intermediate coach who's kind of got some sense of confidence and is really taken hold of this thing. You should ask powerful questions. So they become really good at it. They have a whole list on their computer of 100 powerful questions that they can draw from. And then you watch them coach, and it's like watching an interrogation. And it's not that their questions are not good, but there's just so many of them. They don't let the client breathe. They don't let the client really think. They don't actually really listen. They're just waiting for the chance to ask the next question. This is a person who has emerging mastery, but lots of immaturity. And so for each of these, there's 5 of the maturities. There's a primary gift. What does that maturity bring us? There's the I-beam is a model I created. I did a project with Google years ago, and we created this acronym around research I was doing on what creates performance at work. And so each of these reflects of one of the factors you're trying to help develop in your client, as well as develop in yourself. And each maturity supports one of the masteries. So the first one is basically, what can I draw on in myself? What mindsets do I bring to coaching? And so, for example, if you're coaching someone who's just lost their job, and you're somebody that's never really processed some big griefs in your life, you're going to be less attentive, less mature, less available for someone who's experiencing the shock of losing their job because you don't have the capacity in yourself because you've never done that work for yourself. So as we often say, the clients can often only travel as far as you can. And so we always start all of our programs helping our students be aware of their current capacity and then developing deeper capacity because then they have more personal maturity, which means they come from a more complete mindset. So that's the first of the maturities. The second one has to do with what you can see. So one of the things that it took me a long time to realize when I used to travel a lot and do demonstrations at conferences and graduate coaching programs was 2 things. One was they observed that, unlike now when I'm doing this, I hardly talked in coaching. They said, you were silent most of the time. I said, I'm not getting paid to talk to the client. I'm getting paid to hold space for the client to do their work, which was an eye-opener for most of them. And I said, they don't need me to talk a lot. The second thing was they would say, well, how did you know to ask that? I said, because it was right there. And I realized that they didn't even notice the vast majority of what I saw. And so this one is really important in coaching because a lot of what we're doing is noticing, and noticing quite exquisitely. Aspiration includes like motivation, intention. For me, it plays a lot into values. So what values are at risk for this client if they can't resolve their issue? I think of this as spiritual maturity. Again, it may or may not involve religion or even overt spirituality. It's more the thing I admire about spirituality is that when we practice whatever we practice, we get much clearer, we get more honest, we get more awake, we get more aware. And so this is a maturity that's really important because you can only act on what you see. And so we want you as a coach to be able to see more, notice more, but also do so more clearly. And the more mature we are in this dimension, then the better off we're going to be. If we feel uncomfortable with certain things, we often end up driving the conversation in a direction that stays within our comfort zone, as opposed to what the client actually might need from us. All right, here's the third one. This is the one we are most familiar with in most coaching programs. This has to do with what you can actually do. What are the behaviors, the basic behaviors that are required for you as a coach, but also the behaviors of the client in terms of what they are trying to accomplish. Very much around professional maturity. Do I understand the mechanics? Do I understand the core elements? Do I understand the order that things tend to go in? Do I understand the things I'm going to need to get this done as a coach or as a client? And again, this is our favorite around, this is our competencies. This often comes later in the process, often for our coaching, because we don't make any pretense that we know what's going to happen when we start a session. So we don't want to set any action plans or goals because we don't even know where we're going yet. And the last two, so these are really important because they actually round everything out. So capability is really just our ability to do things well and wisely. So the maturity to read the environment, to recognize, oh, this client has just had this huge epiphany about some of their problems in their life. Now it's not a time to create an action plan because they just barely realized this. They're still reeling from like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize it about myself. And saying, yes, I'm maybe really brilliant at creating action plans. Now is completely the wrong time to do that. It's insulting to the client. And so this is where wisdom comes in. And so we think of it, this is social maturity, the ability to read your environment, the ability to discipline yourself, to try to match and align with what's actually happening in the environment. The social maturity to recognize if I'm a white man and I'm talking to a young black woman as a client, their world is very different than mine, unfortunately, but it often is. So I might say things that to me seem obvious to her, like would seem like, why would you say that? I can't do that. And so it's being aware of creating the conditions and when the client feels welcome and purely themselves. And so that we're adjusting what we're doing to ways that fit what they're ready for, what their world is like, and which will be a good fit for them when they leave the session. And again, if I'm assessing somebody, I'm not as interested in how well they did something as I am, is this what they're doing the right fit for this person at the right time? Well, and the last one, and then I'll give you a funny example of what this looks like. So the last one all comes back down to identity, how the client and you see yourselves. This is the last of the maturities, which is, can you embody what you've now learned? Is this become part of who you are? Are you being a coach now as opposed to doing coaching? You can also do this and catalyze this for the client. And this is a contextual maturity. In a real moment in time, I can assess the context I'm in, and I can decide in real time what of what I know and what I'm good at and what I see do I want to bring up now. And this, the better we can have contextual maturity, the more credible we become. And that credibility has both an internal dimension, like I can reflect on what I've done, I can explain why I've done what I've done, I have a felt sense for what's happened, so I'm credible because there's integrity in myself. There's also credibility in the sense that what I'm doing is based in evidence or based in experience such that I have a high probability it's going to be successful. And so you're credible because you act on what you say you're going to do, and what you do tends to work most of the time. All right. So these are the 5 maturities. It gives us a very simple matrix here to begin to get some language around the things you do well already, where you see you have strengths, but also the areas where you observe, I think I could do better here. So I'm going to stop there for a second and see if there's anything that comes up for you. Then I want to give you a humorous example before we get to the last piece before we close. Anything that comes up for you when you see this or
I think
hear about
it's a super way to think about how when you're an experienced coach, the way it works. But I think it's all underpinned by trust and building that trust.
Mhm.
And so you build the trust through listening, you build the trust through being integral. And I think part of that as a coach as well is in the space, you creating silence, not just for them, but if you're processing what they're saying, that's a really good point, let me process that. And then you can reflect back on it so they feel heard and understood. And I think if you do that, then like what you're saying about, something emotional comes up, it feels a safe space for them to talk about something that's emotional for them rather than trying to hide it. And then you can go with them as a coach into that place where they need to go.
Yep. And so, and part of that, particularly if you have a fairly aware client who can recognize what you're saying about themselves, it's like, oh yeah, I can see that. That one of the things, and that's a part of what I've written in the book about restructuring coaching, and is that most adults have no safe place to practice those new things. So they don't, most of them. They certainly are not going to try it at work because there's too much risk. So for me, we do a lot of experience creation and experimentation in coaching and narrative coaching. But I think there's just a great opportunity to sort of begin to think about smaller ways we can support clients to continue what they've started with us and practice that more often so they build some confidence at embodying and enacting what they've learned from us. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. And I think part of it as well is us pointing out, like we're saying, what we've noticed that they're not aware that might be going on, and then framing questions around that. Years ago, I went to a talk about somebody that had just been on a weekend coaching course, and he was giving a speech on how to coach, and he got somebody up from the audience who had a problem, and he just kept taking them through the grow model. And I just thought, she's not going anywhere because she's not recognizing what the big issue in her life is, because he'd just done this course and think he could coach. And I thought, and that's why I'm loving what you're saying about reframing the coaching, because it's a start, but it doesn't help the client if they're feeling stuck and and the coach isn't listening or asking any other questions apart from the grow model about how to help them even and figure out what the root cause is. So I love what you're saying. Thank you.
I had a number of breakfasts with John Whitmore before he passed away when I was living in Sydney, and I interviewed him a few times for articles, and he always regretted in some ways that the grow model is what he was most known for, because he said, I did so much else after that. That's what I'm known for. And even he himself, thought it was a great place to begin. And I got the origin story of where the model came from and stuff. But yeah, I hear you. Anybody else?
I've got it.
David.
Yeah. I've got a sort of more of a question. It was just based on something that that came up while you were chatting. How important or what impact does the client's level of self-awareness have on the way that you would apply the 5 maturities when you're working with a client?
Certainly it's easier and probably more enjoyable sometimes when they're more awakened, because then they can do some of this for themselves. But again, if I go back to if we take the fundamental tenet in coaching to really truly meet the client where they are, people are, I mean, especially right now, the world's a mess. And so even those of us who feel pretty sane most of the time are struggling on some, and so it's a really important thing. And so again, part of why the book feels urgent to me in a way is to really, we're here to grow as human beings first and foremost, and helping our clients do the same regardless of where they've started from. And so, and I use this analogy all the time as I used to do a lot of gardening when I built a huge garden where I used to live. Um, and 90% of gardening is taking care of the soil. The rest is pretty straightforward.
Mm.
And most people don't understand that. They just throw some seeds out and pray. So I think the analogy, if you've got a client who's not very self-aware yet, then you try to engineer a conversation or set up goals and steps. And again, there's a woman named Daphne Hewson who wrote a brilliant piece about narrative therapy, but it applies very much here. She said, you can't just like graft a part of a tree onto another tree. It's going to die, right? You've got to actually make sure that they match. And so you can't be in a session where someone's got an old story about like lack of awareness or lack of preparation or lack of whatever, and then graft on a goal or even an epiphany in coaching, because that's now attached to a trunk that's not alive, and it will reject the new story, which is why then clients sometimes struggle to continue what they've started with us. So I would invest with those kind of clients. I invest a lot. The ratio of action versus reflection shifts dramatically to a lot more reflection. And we just make that simple enough. We focus it around what they're trying to achieve. So like maybe they really struggle to mentalize. They don't have a lot of maturity to imagine that not everybody sees the world that they do. So I might really up the ante about practicing mentalization. And then saying, where could you try that in your life? That would be an easy place to begin. What's one question you could ask your partner to show more interest in their worldview or to gather more hear more from them? So because then this is tilling the soil. You're helping them find some early successes. You're helping them build up some skills and self-awareness. You're building up confidence and even prioritization that this is a good thing. And then when it comes to, now let's come back around to what you said you came to coaching for. How does that seem to you now? Oh, I see all these things I completely missed before. And what I believe that if you focus too much on the problem that's presented, you're like just pecking at problems all through the coaching series, right? If you build up a robust soil, then they can do more and more of this themselves, which for me feels like the ultimate point of coaching. I feel successful not only when the client has achieved a meaningful outcome, when they, for right now, they don't need me anymore. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. So we have to stop in a little bit. So I think I'm going to forgo the story, but I can give you the punchline of the story I was going to tell you about these 5 maturities. I just laid it out in uh, so when I was in college, I had been a swimmer all my life. I had been a lifeguard at times. I helped pay for college. I was a lifeguard at the pool at the school, which also doubled as a community pool. And we had to do continuous training. So we did a class on group life saving. What do you do like you're at a lake with friends and the boat capsizes and then you discover that half the people on the boat can't swim? And so we got trained in this. And then there was, I think, 6 of us. They actually brought a boat into the pool and put volunteer students into it. And the teacher said, well, we've done all the training. This is the final exam. I'm going to blow my whistle. They're going to fall out of the boat. And then you'll take turns rescuing them. And unfortunately, I had to go first. And so she blows the whistle and I completely froze, just completely froze. I forgot everything I learned in class. And so I map it, and you'll get this in the handout, but I mapped this to the maturities. I'll just tell you the first one. So for me, my mindset failure was that I came into this wanting to show that I was a good lifeguard, which was not the point of this exercise at all. The point of the exercise was I needed to show as a good leader. Because when I came from the mindset I need to be a good lifeguard, I looked out there and said, "Oh crap, there's one of me and 5 of them. How am I going to do this? How am I going to save them all?" And completely in the wrong, as opposed to there's 5 wonderfully trained lifeguards standing right next to me that I'd completely forgotten about, right? I just talked to them like 2 minutes ago, but I went to this mindset that took me off in another direction. And then everything kind of went downhill from there. Um, and it just set all these things in motion. And so the maturities are really important, and I think a really useful tool to understand what am I missing or where am I not as mature as I would like to be that might make it easier for me to do something that I've decided is important. So I want to just kind of run through what being more mature in each of these 5 areas, how it might help us all as coaches. So here's, skip this part. Here we go. Here's the first one. So the more mature we are, the more we can free ourselves of what others tell us coaching is supposed to be. And that we start then conforming to more juvenile assessment system than yours. As opposed to what I said before, I have so much, like you all, in your own way. I have so much to offer my clients. Why would I restrict myself to this box somebody decided was called coaching? And I'm sorry, I can't help you because that's not coaching. It's ridiculous to me. So I'm committed to integrity. So I want to use all of who I am and all that I know and all that I've done that's useful for the client based on their terms, not mine. And sometimes that looks like coaching, sometimes not so much. But again, if it's in the integrity of our agreements and I feel qualified and ready to go, they feel ready for this, then for me, that's fine. And again, with these, I'm not saying that you have to believe what I believe. You have your own views on this. That's great. I'm just saying there's some myths in coaching I would like us to at least question and find a path forward that works for us, for each of you. So the second one, I have to fully understand everything my client is telling me because that's the only way I can be helpful. And a lot of people come into coaching to be helpful. So my invitation to you is stop trying so hard to be helpful. And what I find is that when people overfunction on trying to be helpful, they miss a lot of what's actually happening. And they often end up overfunctioning in ways that don't help the client in the end. And so for me, I come more from this place. So when I get to the end of a session, I'm asking myself, not how great of a job I did, although I do reflect and journal a lot about that. I'm more interested in, did they leave more aware of themselves than when they came in? And just as an example of this, when I used to do in-person retreats all over the world, I think I did them in 30 countries at one point. And people sometimes would want maybe some private work or some deeper work outside of what they were learning in their retreat. And so we'd have some one-on-one time on a coffee break or afterwards. And I would tell them, if it was true for them, I want you to share with me what's happening for you in your native language. Please do not try to translate this into English because you will lose access to yourself. You lose access to memories, your body, parts of your brain. Just talk in whatever language comes first to you. And their first question always is, but then you won't be able to understand me. And I said, I don't need to be able to understand you. I need to be able to see you. So I will watch you and I will ask things based on what I'm observing. What happens to your facial expressions, your body, your tone of voice, your eye contact, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm just going to be a mirror back to you, but I'm not going to give you information because I have no idea what you're telling me in French or Swahili or whatever you end up talking in. And I had people that actually would cry to just the beauty of being able to not being forced into English, but to talk in their native language. And indeed give them so much more access to deeper parts of themselves. And then my job is just to hold up a mirror. This is what I'm hearing you say, just by watching you. And in the end, I have no idea where they ended up unless they told me. But they seemed satisfied, and so we moved on. So our need to understand so we can be helpful and clever and it has value, but probably not as much as we think sometimes. Yes, if the client's being totally confusing or it makes absolutely no sense to us, it's probably true for other people in their life, so we might want to tell them that. in some fashion, or might help them get clear, but not for our sake, but for theirs. Okay, next one. My favorite. So again, so for someone like you, Austin, great. Companies models will be really helpful to you to kind of get your feet wet and kind of figure out how to make all this work. But there will come a point in which they become not as useful. And so the encouragement for all of us is to continue to evolve ourselves to become the best person that we can be and the most masterful practitioner we can be, which may or may not align with what other people believe coaching is supposed to be. Yeah. Fourth one around social maturity. I must always color within the lines of models, methods, and roles I was taught. Yeah, I get this even from my students, like, well, do I who want to do narrative coaching a little bit differently? I said, of course, exactly, go do that. I'm not telling you that this is my view of coaching. I think this works really well. If you want to bring in pieces from something else you learned that worked for you and help the client, great. I have no attachment. We're not kindergartners having to color in coloring books, right? We're adults responsible for a blank canvas when our client shows up. And so for me, I want to be free to consciously and intentionally improvise as I'm going. I don't want to be held to, oh, we should be doing step 4 now, but the client went over here. But actually, we think of this often as conscious improvisation. And my fundamental question, like I've said before, was what does this person need most right now? When we used to do live sessions, often I would move my chair some, just trying to stay in contact with the field that we're working in and what role I'm being asked to play. And then the last one, and then we can stop. And going back to where we began, continuing education is vital to all of us to stay current on knowledge, on research, on our own thinking and our own maturity. And I find that oftentimes, particularly in coaching, there's this sort of deficit thinking sometimes that I need more and more and more and more and more. And so I want to just invite you just to relax, even for you, Austin, as a beginner. I don't know where Jenny, you and Amita are on this, and say, I'm a beginner. Isn't that great? Someday I'll be more than this, but now I'm a beginner. And so how do I be the best beginner I can be? What does a beginner need? Right? And compare yourself to what you need in that space. And so ultimately coaching is a function of how we are with people. And so if we're going to walk with them into the unknown and the mystery of they're facing in their life or their work, we've got to be able to do that with courage and confidence with them, which again comes back to our own maturity. Okay? So I'm going to stop there. I realize we're at the bottom of the hour, so we need to stop. But a little whirlwind tour of the 5 maturities, and I hope this has been helpful for you.
I just want to say I feel totally freed up to be the coach I am. So I wanted to thank you for that. I've been
You're
coaching
welcome.
for 14 years now. I'm actually just going for my fellow accreditation. I was looking at the criteria they've got to go through. And I was thinking, oh, I don't always do that. I don't always do that. I don't always ask at the beginning of the session, what you want to achieve. Because like you said, sometimes you just need to see where it goes. I'm like, brilliant,
Yeah.
David. If I don't do that in my assessment with you, I can just blame it on David Drake.
Yeah, go right
But
ahead.
but I just want to say thank you because I think as you coach for longer, this, the listening and the seeing where it goes, and rather than just going through the models, I mean, it just seems so there's a time and place for them, and in some coaching sessions I will still use it, but most of the time it's very much just being in the moment and then navigating that with clients, so then they get more than just gold at the end of it. They have a revelation or an epiphany or whatever it is that they need to get. So thank you.
You're welcome. And even for Austin, for me, part of why I don't ask, I want to know, are we playing cricket? Are we playing baseball? Are we knitting? What are we doing here? So we have some basic sense of how we're starting the conversation, but I don't set an agenda. I don't ask what they want to achieve by the end because most clients have no idea. there might come, this is on fire, or this just happened, or I'm having this emotion, or so they're coming with something that caused them to come to coaching. But what we're really going to do there, neither of us have any idea when they begin. So why am I going to spend time trying to set an elaborate agenda that's likely 99% of the time going to change anyways? I want to just meet a human being and saying, welcome. I'm glad to see you. Grateful that you're here. And I just have them start into what feels important to them. And then at some point along the way, could be in 2 minutes, could be in 20 minutes, they figure out what they're actually doing there. Like, okay, now we have game on. Let's go do this.
I think sometimes it depends on the context though, because like Amit, I have my own clients, but I do a lot of corporate coaching, and sometimes they're very short coaching frames and you've got to deliver things within that. I'm a career coach, and so it might be like, CV review or LinkedIn, and then it's got to be very action plan orientated and move forward. But that's what you're saying, that's where the maturity comes in, knowing what you need in what context to get the most out of the client. And so you can deliver for the business, well, for the corporate client, so they can then get good reviews and they can get more business. It's all about surveys sometimes.
It is. Yeah. Yeah, and so oftentimes when I have a more pedestrian task with the client, I'll complete the task in a way that feels satisfying. Then I'll give them 3 reflection questions to ask on the way home that they can do on their own time that might take them deeper than just the more mechanical thing they just finished.
Yeah, it's a nice idea.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you.
You're most welcome. David, over to you.
Thank you very much, David. That was, I mean, we've talked many times before, so like, and around a number of these areas, and I find it so like inspirational. So like every time, so like, we talk more about it, and I think for me, sometimes you forget about the importance of meeting the client where they are. And because you can sort of conceptualize and say, right, I'm going to put the model to one side, but it sort of lingers in the background. So that ability to just totally go, you know what, I'm going to meet you where you are, and then whatever evolves, it just evolves. And being in that space, I think is just you're getting to that point. I think so. Like is absolutely sort of absolutely sort of like what we want to be doing.
And if you let go of some of the other stuff we were taught you're supposed to do, you actually get to that place faster.
Yeah. Yeah, I've said on many occasions that so like models are useful. So I very much like what you've been. Models are useful, but they can also be a massive hindrance. If you're wedded to wedded to things like that. But I'm mindful of everybody's time. Does anybody have any questions or any queries or anything that they would like to ask?
We are over the time, but a quick one, David, to you. Is there a hierarchy? I mean, do you go from 1 to 5 in terms of maturity, or they apply to different situations? There could be a situation or a kind of client that I show up better with personal maturity, maybe less with spiritual maturity. And what does the model imply? I haven't read the book, so I'm so sorry if it's a silly question.
Well, yeah, no, this book's won't be out till in January, February, but yeah, so I'm not big on scales like that, but there, certainly is a lot of research on scales of mastery. So going back to your point, Jenny, so by the time a master has been around, the rules are so ingrained in them they can start breaking them. And but you have to get to that point. So there's like from the Dreyfus brothers, there's the most well-known scale around expertise development and mastery. One could probably create a kind of a linear, rating of maturity. I don't have an interest in that myself, but somebody might. But again, to your question, I'm also trying to subtly assess the client about their own level of maturity. And so, I've got a client that's got tension in their team and they're not sure how to resolve it. And you realize they've got almost no social awareness at all. Okay, so it doesn't matter what objectives we set or what skills I teach them. they're not even going to see 90% of what you need to see about why there's tension on their team. And so I might just reflect that back to them. I'm noticing that as you're talking that you're not really seeming to be very aware of what this is like for other people. Would you like to work on that for a while? So I'm making my sort of informal kind of assessment myself about where I think they might need some strengthening as scaffolding for them to learn some new skills.
And that's important because how directive you should be is also based on where the client is. I mean, this thing about meeting the client wherever he is a very loaded kind of a statement. I'm so sorry. But
No
this
worries.
is a point I'm interested in. I don't know how to chase it up with you. I'll read the book perhaps and come back to you.
Okay. Please do.
David, it's do you have any sort of contact details or anything anywhere that you would like to guide people to, or before we come to an end?
Yeah. If you want to, I can just give you my email address if you want. We're in the middle of putting together some cool new stuff for next year that might interest you. Our programs right now are finishing, but we're working with the Ovida platform to do an extraordinary adventure in skill building that's open to any coach, and that'll be really exciting. And then we've got a design studio imagining how do you build or grow your practice for this kind of world we live in now. Here's my email address. But you can also just go on the Moment Institute website if you want to sign up, and you'll get in touch with the stuff we're working on. So if you want any more of this, you know where to find me.
Yeah, and is the article that originally drew me to you, so is that still available via the Moments Institute?
Which one was that, David? Do you remember?
It was the original introduction to the the Five Masteries that you wrote.
Yeah. So the original report that came out last year is still on the website.
Yeah, great.
All right.
Okay. In which case, David, thank you very much for
You're most welcome.
Great insights. For those of you who attended, thank you very much. For those of you who are listening live, thank you very much. And for those of you who will listen to the recording, thank you very much.
All right.
So with no more of ado, David, thank you very much. I hope you enjoy the remainder of your evening. Amit, Austin, thank you very much. I wish you well, and good luck for the future.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Y'all have a good day.
You're welcome. Bye.
Bye now.